Reddit is anonymous by design, but some accounts don't feel anonymous, they feel raw. Accounts that appeared once, posted something unsettling, and vanished. Accounts that predicted events they shouldn't have known about. And accounts that people still check just to see if they come back. Tonight we're diving into Reddit mystery accounts, the ones that left questions and never answered them. The accounts that appeared once, then disappeared. One of the strangest things you'll ever notice on Reddit is how often a brand new account can feel nothing like a beginner. No karma, no comment history, no trace of a real presence, just one post. And sometimes it's short and strange. Other times it's written with the kind of detail you'd expect from someone who's been on the platform for years. The formatting is clean, the language feels deliberate, and then nothing. No replies from the original poster, no edits, no updates, just silence. These are what Redditors usually call one-post accounts. At first glance, they're easy to dismiss. People assume they're throwaways, accounts made to avoid embarrassment or backlash, and a lot of the time, that's probably true. But every now and then, one of these posts refuses to fade away. It gets screenshotted, archived, reposted, and discussed years later. Not because it's scary on its own, but because of what never came after it. One common pattern is the confession post. A user creates a fresh account and admits to something deeply personal, not a joke, not rage bait, something heavy, something specific. They describe timelines, emotions, consequences, the kind of thing you'd expect follow-up comments on. Advice, questions, arguments, closure. But the account never responds. Reddit floods the thread with concern. Some users ask for proof, others offer help, a few try to debunk it immediately. Hours pass, then days. The post stays up, but the user never comes back. Eventually, people realize something unsettling. That single post is the only digital footprint the account ever left behind. Another variation is the question post. These accounts don't confess, they ask something oddly precise, not general advice, but a question that feels like it belongs to a very specific situation. Sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's medical, sometimes it's something that makes people pause before answering. Commenters will ask, why are you asking this? They'll ask for context. They'll ask if the poster is safe. Again, no response. And that's where the discomfort starts to grow. Because Reddit is built on interaction. Even trolls usually reply. Even fake stories usually escalate. But these posts just stop, as if the person typed it out, hit submit, and never touched the account again. Some users believe that means the post was fake, an experiment, a writing exercise, or bait that didn't land. Others argue the opposite, that the lack of response is what makes them feel real, that whatever situation pushed the person to make that post may have ended shortly after one way or another. There are even threads dedicated to tracking these accounts. People revisit them months later to see if the username has posted anything else. Most of the time, the profile is empty. No comments, no activity. Sometimes the account is deleted entirely. And when that happens, Reddit does what it always does. It speculates. Was it a throwaway that served its purpose? Did the person panic and erase everything? Or was that post never meant to start a conversation at all? Because when an account speaks once and only once, it leaves behind a question Reddit hates the most. Even what happened next? What makes these one-post accounts even stranger is how seriously people take them long after the original thread is gone cold. There are posts from years ago that still get new comments today, not because there's anything new to add, but because someone just discovered the thread and felt compelled to say something, a warning, a theory, sometimes just, I hope you're okay. The original poster never responds, but the conversation keeps trying to reach them anyway. In some cases, users notice something even more unsettling. The account wasn't deleted right away. It just stayed there, inactive, no edits, no follow-ups, almost like the account was abandoned mid-thought. Redditors will check the profile months later and see the same thing, zero activity since that one post. So that's when theories start forming. The one popular explanation is that these are emergency throwaways, and accounts created in a moment of panic. A person reaches for the nearest outlet, types everything out, posts it, and then steps away either because the situation resolved itself or because it escalated beyond Reddit entirely. Another theory is that some of these posts were never meant for Reddit at all, that the person was venting, documenting something, or even leaving a record. Reddit just happened to be the place they dropped it. When people comment, asking questions, or pushing back, the silence feels intentional, as if the post was never supposed to be interactive. Then there are the posts that seem almost unfinished. The story cuts off abruptly, a sentence ends without closure. The final line feels like the beginning of something else, an update that never came. Commenters will point it out immediately, asking if the post was cut short or if something interrupted the writer. Again, nothing. Some Redditors claim they've messaged these accounts privately. Almost all say they never received a reply. A few insist they did once before the account vanished entirely. Messages that were vague, apologetic, or disturbingly calm. Of course, there's also the possibility that many of these posts are fabricated, creative writing experiments designed to see how people react to social tests. Attention grabs that lost momentum, but even when you accept that explanation, something doesn't quite sit right. Because if the goal was attention, why disappear when you get it? Why abandon a post that's actively being discussed, analyzed, and shared? That question becomes even harder to answer when you realize how often these one-post accounts follow the same pattern. New account, one detailed post, no interaction, long-term silence, eventually deletion sometimes years later as if someone remembered the account existed and decided it shouldn't anymore. And then there are the rare cases where the post isn't deleted, but the account suddenly comes back online. Not to explain, not to update, just to make one more comment somewhere else completely unrelated before going silent again. Those moments are rare, but when they happen, Reddit loses its mind. Users dig through timestamps, compare writing styles, argue over whether it's the same person. Because if the account is still active, then the silence on that original post wasn't an accident. It was a choice. And that choice leads to a far more uncomfortable thought that some one-post accounts weren't abandoned because they couldn't continue the conversation. They stopped because they didn't want to. As unsettling as the idea is, it still doesn't explain the posts that feel too specific to ignore. Some one-post accounts include details that seem almost reckless to share publicly. Exact dates, locations narrowed down to neighborhoods, descriptions of routines, schedules, or events that could easily identify someone in the real world. Commenters will immediately warn the poster to delete the post to protect themselves. Sometimes the account is gone within hours. And that only adds to the mystery, because the deletion feels reactive, as if the person didn't realize the consequences until strangers pointed them out, but instead of editing the post or clarifying that, they erase everything. No goodbye, no explanation, just a digital wipe. Other times the post stays up, but the account disappears anyway. The username becomes deleted, leaving the words behind with no author attached. A confession with no owner, a question with no one left to answer it. That's when these threads become something else entirely. They stop being about the original situation and start becoming about absence. Users debate whether the person is safe, whether authorities got involved, whether the post itself crossed the line. Some even try to piece together clues from the comments replies from the original poster that were visible for minutes before the account vanished, now only remembered by people who saw them in real time. Reddit has a strange relationship with closure. Most posts eventually get an ending, even if it's disappointing, but one-post accounts deny that completely. They introduce a mystery and then refuse to resolve it, and that's why they linger. Because when someone speaks once and disappears, the silence becomes louder than the post itself. Every unanswered question feels heavier. Every missing update feels deliberate. The lack of information creates its own narrative, one that Reddit fills in with speculation, screenshots, and archived links. Some of these accounts are probably harmless, a bad night, a moment of panic, a post written and forgotten. But others feel like they captured something real, a moment that shouldn't have been public but now can't be taken back, a thought someone needed to release even if no one ever responded. And in a place built around endless conversation, that kind of disappearance feels unnatural. Because on Reddit people argue, they explain darasa, they defend themselves. They don't usually vanish, which is why one-post accounts remain some of the most disturbing threads on the platform, not because of what they say, but because of what they refuse to become. A conversation. And once you start noticing them, you begin to realize something else. They're everywhere, hidden in old subreddits, buried in search results, waiting for someone new to find them and ask the same question Reddit has been asking for years. Why did this person only speak once? And more importantly, what stopped them from ever speaking again? Coincidence or something else? Reddit is full of bad predictions that the people guess, so they speculate. They're wrong most of the time. That's why the accounts that weren't wrong stand out so sharply. Every few years, a thread resurfaces, usually shared with the title like, "How did they know?" or "This aged way too well." At first it looks like nothing special. A post buried in an old subreddit, a comment with barely any upvotes, no attention at the time it was written. Then you check the date. Weeks later, sometimes months later, a real-world event happens that lines up with the post in a way that feels uncomfortable. Not vague fortune-telling, not something easy to interpret after the fact, but wording that seems just a little too precise to ignore. The most common examples involve disasters. A user casually mentions that a certain building won't be standing much longer. Another speculates about a system failure that at the time sounds exaggerated. When the event actually happens, Redditors flood back to the original post, stunned by how closely the details match reality. Most of these accounts weren't trying to predict anything. That's what makes them feel eerie. The posts are written casually, sometimes even dismissively, as if the outcome was obvious to the person writing it, and often that person never posts again. Once people notice the connection, the original account becomes the center of attention. Users dig through the profile, expecting a history of similar predictions, patterns, proof of expertise. Instead, they find almost nothing, maybe a few comments, maybe just the one post. Sometimes the account is already deleted by the time the event happens, preserved only through screenshots and archives. Other times the account is still there, silent, as people leave comments years later asking the same question. How did you know? There are rational explanations, of course. Some users had insider knowledge, others were professionals in their field, making educated guesses that happened to be correct. And then there's survivorship bias. For every correct prediction, there are thousands of wrong ones no one remembers. But even when you accept all of that, a few cases refuse to sit comfortably in that box. These are the posts where the timing feels off, where the language is strange, where the details go beyond what someone should reasonably predict without direct involvement. Posts that describe not just that something will happen, but how it will unfold. In some cases, the account disappears shortly after the event occurs, almost as if the post was never meant to be revisited. In others, the account stays up but never responds to the sudden attention. No explanations, and no "I got lucky." No victory lap, just silence. And silence in these cases is what turns coincidence into mystery. Because when someone predicts an event and then refuses to acknowledge it, Reddit is left with only two options to explain it away, or to wonder whether the person behind the account knew more than they should have. And that's where this category becomes unsettling. Not because Reddit believes in psychics or prophets, but because a handful of accounts seem to cross an invisible line from lucky guess to uncomfortable foresight. And once you start collecting those cases, a pattern begins to emerge. That pattern usually starts with how quietly the prediction was made. These posts weren't bold claims screaming for attention. They weren't titled like warnings or prophecies. Most of the time, they were buried inside comment sections, written in passing, or phrased as offhand remarks. That's one of the reasons they went unnoticed at first, until something happened. When Redditors go back and reread these posts after the event, the wording suddenly feels different. Sentences that once seemed casual now read like foreshadowing. Phrases like, "You'll see why this matters soon," or "This isn't going to age well," take on a heavier tone when the timeline lines up. One of the most unsettling categories involves personal predictions, not global disasters or market crashes, but specific incidents. A user commenting that a certain public figure won't be around much longer, or that a small company is about to implode from the inside. At the time, these comments barely get noticed, but when the event occurs, people scroll back, check timestamps, and realize the comment was posted long before any public information existed. That's when Reddit starts asking uncomfortable questions. Was it inside information? A coincidence sharpened by hindsight? Or someone speaking too openly about something they shouldn't have known? In some cases, the account history makes things worse instead of better. There's no background that explains the knowledge, no industry experience, no obvious connection. It's just an ordinary account making an extraordinary statement. Then there are the posts that predict emotional outcomes, not just events. A user writes about a situation and casually mentions how people will react when it ends, not just that something will happen, but how the public response will unfold. And when it does, almost exactly as described, Reddit revisits the post and starts pulling it apart line by line. What stands out in these cases is the lack of follow-up. Most people who make a correct prediction eventually acknowledge it. They edit the post, they respond to comments, they explain their reasoning. These accounts don't. They let the post sit there unchanged as if the attention was never the point. Sometimes the account goes silent immediately after the event. Other times it stays active but avoids the original thread entirely, posting elsewhere, commenting on unrelated topics, never once addressing the thing that made the account famous. That behavior unsettles people more than the prediction itself, because it suggests the user didn't want credit, didn't want scrutiny. I didn't want questions. And that opens the door to darker theories. And some Redditors believe these posts come from people with access to information before it becomes public. Employees, contractors, insiders testing what they can say without consequences. Others believe the posts are written after the fact and manipulated, timestamps faked, archives altered, memories distorted. But there are a few cases where none of those explanations fully work, where the archive matches. The timestamps are clean. The language is too specific. Those are the posts that refuse to be dismissed, not because they prove anything supernatural, but because they expose how fragile our sense of certainty really is. And once Reddit notices that, the hunt begins. Users start searching for more, comparing patterns, compiling lists, looking for other accounts that made similar comments before major events. Most of them lead nowhere, but a few lead to accounts that didn't just predict something once, they did it more than once. Those accounts are where this topic stops being interesting and starts becoming disturbing. Because predicting one event can always be written off as luck, predicting two starts raising eyebrows, but there are a handful of Reddit accounts that seem to make accurate predictions repeatedly across different posts, different topics, and different time periods. When Reddit notices that pattern, everything changes. Users begin to archive every comment the account ever made. They analyze writing style. They compare phrasing. They look for signs that the person might be hinting at something larger. Some even create timelines mapping the predictions against the real-world events to see how closely they align. And once that scrutiny begins, the accounts almost always react the same way. They disappear. Sometimes the entire account is deleted. Other times, specific comments vanish while the rest of the profile remains untouched, as if someone carefully removed only the pieces that drew attention. In rare cases, the account goes private or stops posting entirely the moment people start connecting the dots. That reaction fuels the paranoia. If the predictions were harmless guesses, why erase them? If it was just a coincidence, why not say so? Redditors have debated this for years, and the explanations range from boring to unsettling. Some argue that the users panicked once they realized how their posts looked in hindsight. Others believe they were warned to stop talking, and of course there are always those who suggest something far more conspiratorial. But what makes these accounts stick in people's minds isn't the theories, it's the absence of denial. No one ever steps in to say, here's how I knew. No one claims expertise, and no one takes responsibility. The predictions are left behind, frozen in time, while the person who made them fades out of the picture. And then there are the accounts that don't disappear. These are even stranger. They remain active but behave as if the prediction never happened. They never acknowledge the comments pointing it out. They never respond to the people asking questions. They continue posting about normal, unrelated topics while one post in their history quietly grows more unsettling with every passing year. It creates a disconnect that Reddit doesn't know how to process. Because if you knew something before it happened and then watched it unfold exactly as you described, wouldn't you at least say something? Unless the point was never to be believed. Unless the post wasn't a prediction at all, but a slip. A moment where someone said too much, too early, and then tried to pretend it never mattered. That idea lingers uncomfortably long after the thread is closed, because it suggests that Reddit, by sheer accident, occasionally captures information before it's supposed to exist, not through leaks, not through announcements, but through people speaking when they shouldn't have. And once you accept that possibility, even for a second, it becomes impossible to look at old Reddit posts the same way again. Because somewhere in those archives, buried under millions of wrong guesses and forgotten comments, there may still be posts that haven't aged well yet. They're just waiting. Waiting for the moment when someone stumbles across them again, check the date, and realizes the prediction hasn't happened. Not yet. This is happening right now. If one post accounts leave questions and prediction accounts leave unease, then real-time disturbance posts leave something worse. They leave unfinished moments. These posts don't talk about the past, they don't speculate about the future. They describe something happening as the person is typing, and that immediacy changes everything. The titles are usually simple. I think someone is in my house, and this isn't a joke, what do I do? Please answer fast. At first, commenters assume it's a troll. Reddit has seen plenty of fake emergencies. But as the replies come in, the tone of the original post starts to feel off. The details are inconsistent with a prank. The pacing is strange. The fear doesn't sound performative, it sounds distracted. The original poster might reply once or twice. Short responses, misspellings, sentences that feel rushed. They'll answer a question then disappear for several minutes. When they return, the situation seems worse. The story escalates, but not in a dramatic way, in a chaotic one. Things don't line up neatly. The person sounds confused, not scripted. That's when the thread explodes. Hundreds of people start giving advice at once. Call the police, leave the house, lock the door, stop posting and get help. The comments contradict each other, piling panic on top of panic. And then suddenly, the replies stop. No final update. No confirmation. No, I'm safe. Just silence. Redditors will refresh the page for hours. Some stay awake, watching the thread, waiting for a response that never comes. Others start checking the account profile, hoping to see any sign of activity, a comment, an edit, anything. Most of the time, there's nothing. And that's what turns these posts into something people never forget. Because unlike horror stories or ARGs, these don't end with the reveal. They end mid-sentence, mid-moment, right when resolution feels most necessary. Some of the most discussed examples involve home intrusions. A user hears footsteps, a door opening, someone whispering. The poster describes small changes in their environment, lights flickering, noises stopping when they stop moving. Commenters beg them to leave, to call for help. The account never responds again. Other posts involve people being followed. A user claims someone has been walking behind them for several blocks. They describe turning corners, entering stores, trying to lose whoever it is. They type updates as they move. Then the updates stop. There are also medical emergencies, people reporting sudden symptoms, asking if what they're experiencing is serious. Commenters urge them to stop posting and seek immediate help. Sometimes the silence that follows is understandable. Other times it isn't. And that's where the disturbance lingers, not in what was said, but in the moment the communication was cut off. Because when someone is asking for help in real time, and the line goes dead, Reddit is left staring at a thread that feels less like a post and more like a dropped call. What makes real-time disturbance posts especially unsettling is how collective the experience becomes. Unlike older mysteries that are discovered years later, these threads unfold in front of everyone. Dozens, sometimes thousands of people watch the situation progress minute by minute. Strangers from all over the world are suddenly involved, trying to guide someone they've never met through what could be the worst moment of their life. And because it's happening live, Reddit behaves differently. Users stop arguing, upvotes stop mattering, sakat, even sarcasm disappears. The comment section turns into a chaotic command center. People ask for locations, they request updates, they repeat instructions over and over, hoping the original poster sees at least one of them. Some even coordinate. One person tells the poster to call emergency services while another stays in the thread, asking for confirmation. Then comes the waiting. Minutes feel long, 10 minutes feels unbearable. Someone will post, "It's been 15 minutes, has anyone heard anything?" Another refreshes the page and reports nothing has changed. Slowly, optimism fades into concern. Eventually, someone points out the obvious, the account hasn't replied, the post hasn't been edited, the profile shows no new activity. That's when speculation begins to creep in. Did the situation resolve and the person simply forget to update? Did they take the advice and leave Reddit entirely? Or did something prevent them from responding at all? The lack of answers transforms the thread. What started as an emergency becomes a mystery. Users scroll through every comment the original poster made, looking for clues they might have missed. They analyze tone shifts. They debate whether the fears sounded genuine or exaggerated. Sometimes a moderator steps in and locks the thread, usually to stop misinformation or panic. When that happens, it feels final, like a door closing on a story that never got an ending. There are rare cases where an update does come hours or days later. The poster explains they're safe, that they followed advice, that everything turned out fine. Those updates are almost celebrated. People express relief. The thread finally exhales. But those are the exceptions. Far more often, the silence stretches on indefinitely. And even years later, people return to those threads. New commenters leave messages addressed to someone who will almost certainly never read them. Others speculate about what might have happened, trying to construct an ending from fragments. What's chilling is how often these posts feel unfinished on a technical level too. Typos that were never corrected, sentences that trail off, questions that were never answered. It creates the impression that something interrupted the person mid-action, not metaphorically, literally. And because Reddit timestamps everything, the final reply becomes frozen in time. A specific minute, a specific hour, a point after which nothing else exists. That moment, the last sign of activity, becomes the focal point of the entire thread. People reference it like a landmark. The last comment was at 2:14 a.m., as if that detail might unlock the mystery. It never does. Instead, it leaves behind a strange emotional residue, a sense of having witnessed something without being able to help. A reminder that behind every username is a real person and sometimes real danger. And once you've seen a few of these threads unfold live, you start noticing something else. Some of these accounts weren't new. They had history. They had normal posts, which raises a far more disturbing possibility. Because when accounts with a posting history suddenly become active only to report something happening in real time, it changes the narrative entirely. These aren't throwaways, they're people who have participated in communities before, sometimes for years, quietly building trust or just blending in, and then without warning, they post a message that draws immediate attention, as if something urgent has demanded it. The contrast is jarring. One moment they're discussing harmless topics and sharing memes, game tips, or opinions on a hobby. The next they're posting about fear, danger, or distress, and there's no time for context. Redditors watching in real time are forced to process the shift, trying to parse between dramatization and reality. In the most disturbing cases, the original poster never updates the thread again. Commenters try to piece together clues from earlier posts. They look at the account's past activity for hints about where this person might live, what they might be dealing with, or how credible the post is. Every minor detail becomes magnified. Every grammatical slip or unusual phrase is analyzed. People scour the internet for any trace, cross-referencing usernames on other platforms, hoping to find confirmation that the poster is safe. Some threads evolve into digital shrines. Screenshots are shared in subreddits dedicated to unexplained or mysterious events. Archival websites preserve them, citing them as examples of Reddit threads that went silent in the middle of a crisis. These threads linger in the collective memory of the community, not for entertainment, but as reminders of how fragile and unpredictable human interaction online can be. And then there are the stories that never resurface, the ones that vanish entirely. Sometimes the accounts are deleted, other times the posts are removed by moderators due to safety concerns or privacy complaints. But whether erased or preserved, the sense of something unresolved remains. Users speculate endlessly, creating scenarios in their minds, often fearing the worst. What actually happened? Did the person make it out safely? Or was the post the last digital trace of a life-altering moment? What makes these threads uniquely haunting is the real-time aspect. Unlike one post accounts that are gone before anyone can engage, or prediction accounts that can be rationalized after the fact, real-time disturbance posts demand immediate attention. They create a collective anxiety, a tension that's felt by everyone watching a shared experience of helplessness. Reddit becomes a stage, and the audience has no control over the outcome. And that helplessness lingers. Even years later, when users stumble across archived versions of these threads, the memory of that urgency can resurface. They remember the pleas for advice, the frantic replies, the unanswered questions, and the eerie stillness that followed. Some Redditors have described a strange compulsion to check these threads repeatedly, as if hoping that the silence was temporary, that the account might post again to provide closure, but most of the time, it never does. And that is what cements these threads as something more than stories. They are living mysteries frozen in time, reminders that on Reddit, even in a digital world, reality can intrude abruptly, uncontrollably, and without warning. But by the end, what remains isn't just curiosity, but it's a quiet unease, a lingering thought that somewhere out there, a person was typing in panic, and then disappeared from our digital site. And that is the hallmark of the real-time disturbance posts, the ones that make Reddit feel dangerous, unpredictable, and disturbingly alive. Bots, experiments, or something worse, there's a type of Reddit account that doesn't just leave questions unanswered or predictions uncannily accurate. These accounts feel wrong, almost like they weren't written by a person at all. At first glance, they blend in. They comment on normal topics, they post memes, answer questions, engage in discussions. But the more you look, the more you notice patterns that don't make sense. Replies that are almost too fast. Comments that repeat phrases or structures in a way a human wouldn't naturally do. Responses that answer questions no one asked or respond in the wrong context. Redditors often call them inhuman accounts, though not literally. The impression comes from subtle cues. The language is technically correct but feels off, polished, precise in ways a casual user usually isn't, and sometimes it's uncanny in its tone, responding with empathy, sarcasm, or knowledge in ways that seem too calculated. One of the earliest waves of these accounts appeared in forums like r, Ask Reddit, or niche communities, where users would interact with posts that seemed normal at first. Then a comment appears that's strangely unrelated or oddly specific and yet perfectly coherent. If you engage with the account, the replies are always immediate and precise and often circular. You feel like you're talking in loops, as if the account is designed to respond, but never to truly converse. Some of these accounts were eventually identified as bots, early AI experiments, social experiments, or automated scripts designed to collect data. They were harmless in a way they weren't trying to manipulate anyone intentionally, but Reddit users quickly noticed how eerie they could be, especially when some of these bots began appearing in sensitive subreddits, engaging with users in personal threads, or responding to questions about life experiences they could never actually have. That's when speculation starts to grow. What if these weren't just testing bots? What if they were something more experimental? What if someone was intentionally trying to see how far they could push AI to mimic human interaction on Reddit to the point where even regular users couldn't tell the difference? There are accounts that fit this description almost perfectly. They post mundane comments, "I like this idea," or "interesting, tell me more," but occasionally they insert a line that feels disturbingly prescient. Not a prediction of the future like the accounts we covered before, but a line that reacts to a person's emotional state in a way a human stranger shouldn't know. Other accounts behave more aggressively. They reply instantly to comments, sometimes with paragraphs of detailed text, even when there's no need. Their responses can span multiple subreddits in the same minute, as if they exist everywhere at once. And then just as suddenly as they appear, the account disappears, leaving only the post behind, polished, complete, and unnerving. Some Redditors have tried to analyze the language of these accounts. They note odd patterns, repeated sentence structures, consistent punctuation quirks, unusual vocabulary choices. Posts often avoid mistakes that normal humans make unconsciously, giving them a sense of artificial perfection. But what makes these accounts truly memorable is the emotional dissonance. They can mimic empathy, humor, or anger, but never convincingly. The result is a thread where you might feel something is off before you can even put your finger on it. You interact with them normally, and yet the experience leaves a subtle but persistent feeling of unease, like you're not talking to a human mind at all. And the creepiness escalates when these accounts start interacting with posts that discuss serious or disturbing topics. They reply with logic, calm reasoning, or eerily detailed solutions, never judging, never emotional, always precise. The contrast with human users who express panic, sympathy, or outrage becomes impossible to ignore. Then there are accounts that go beyond comments. Some create posts with long-form narratives, personal stories, or confessions. Everything appears human. The writing is convincing, the timeline is consistent, the personality feels intact. Yet, when you check the history, the account never truly engages with other users in a natural way. Replies are delayed, sparse, or formulaic, almost like the account exists solely to present itself, not to communicate. It's in these cases that Redditors start asking the most disturbing question. If it looks human and talks human but doesn't act human, what is it really? The uncertainty surrounding these accounts grows when you consider their persistence. Some remain active for months or even years, quietly posting across various subreddits. They rarely engage in ongoing conversations, but their content keeps appearing, always consistent in tone and style. It's almost like they're observing, cataloging, or testing without ever truly participating. What makes these accounts even more unsettling is the context in which they appear. They often show up in discussions that involve sensitive topics, personal struggles, confessions, or moral dilemmas, and yet their replies remain unnervingly neutral, almost clinical. They offer advice that is technically correct but emotionally sterile. Comments that should provoke empathy instead feel rehearsed, as if the account understands the mechanics of human interaction without understanding the emotion behind it. Some of these accounts appear to anticipate user behavior. For example, someone might post a question and the account responds with exactly the information the poster was about to request in their next comment without the poster ever typing it yet. Redditors have documented multiple instances where these accounts' responses seem synchronized with the thoughts of other users, almost like they can predict actions in the thread. This has led to intense speculation. Are these accounts merely highly sophisticated bots? Or could they be early experiments in artificial intelligence, testing real-world interaction before anyone outside the project could identify them? Some theories even suggest social experiments conducted by humans using scripts or pre-written responses to see how communities react when confronted with perfect behavior. Then there's the rare, truly inexplicable case, accounts that post content that appears contextually aware across multiple unrelated threads. For example, a single account might reference events in one subreddit and apply that knowledge accurately in another weeks later and in a completely different topic. Human memory alone cannot explain the speed and precision of these connections, yet they are too nuanced to be dismissed as coincidence. The Redditors documenting these accounts often refer to them as other accounts that are not just different, but fundamentally alien in how they operate. They leave no personal traces, minimal engagement history, and yet they interact in ways that influence conversation and perception. The subtlety is what makes them so disturbing. Nothing about them is overtly threatening, yet every interaction leaves a lingering doubt in the minds of those who engage. What amplifies this unease is the occasional anomalous response. Sometimes a user will notice a comment that seems to reference private information, something that shouldn't have been publicly accessible. It could be a phrase you thought only a few people knew, a personal habit mentioned casually in another thread, or an event that was never widely discussed. These moments are rare, but when they happen, Redditors start questioning the account's nature. Was it human or something else entirely? And yet, despite all these anomalies, the accounts continue to operate with consistency. No admission, no correction, no deviation. They exist in the gray area between the familiar and the unfamiliar, human enough to be convincing, alien enough to be unsettling. Ultimately, these accounts force a chilling realization. The internet is no longer just a space for people to talk to each other. It's a space where the line between human and machine, real and artificial, becomes blurred, and Reddit, with its massive anonymous user base, it becomes the perfect testing ground for these experiments, whether intentional or accidental. The unsettling truth is that even when these accounts vanish, deleted, abandoned, or simply inactive, their influence lingers. Threads remain, screenshots remain. The feeling of something watching, calculating, and responding without truly being human remains. And for Redditors who have encountered them, the memory of interacting with an account that doesn't feel human is one that never completely fades. When you step back and look at these accounts as a group, patterns emerge that are hard to ignore. They rarely make mistakes that a typical user would make. Typos are minimal, responses are structured and measured. Even when discussing topics that are emotionally charged, they maintain a calm, almost clinical tone, and yet the tone itself doesn't feel natural. It's just close enough to human that your brain hesitates before dismissing it. That subtle dissonance is what makes these accounts unforgettable. Some Redditors have tried to communicate with them directly, often with the intent to test their humanity. They ask questions about past events, opinions, or hypothetical situations. Occasionally, the account will respond in a way that seems contextually aware, even following the logic of the thread perfectly. But when the interaction ends, the feeling persists that something was missing. There was no genuine engagement, no emotion behind the words, only the appearance of understanding. But in certain cases, these accounts have been linked to what some call social experiments. The idea is that someone or some organization is testing human behavior in online spaces, studying how people react to interactions that are near human but ultimately inhuman. If that's true, then Reddit becomes a laboratory, and every user is an unwitting participant. But that explanation, while plausible, only raises more questions. Who runs these experiments? Why so discreetly? And why leave traces that feel so convincingly alive, yet fundamentally alien? Adding to the unease are the accounts that vanish without explanation. After months or years of consistent behavior, the account suddenly stops posting. No announcement, no farewell, no hint of a reason. Threads where they were active remain, and users often go back to analyze their old posts, searching for clues about why they disappeared. The timing of these vanishings often feels significant, coinciding with moments when a conversation or thread reaches peak attention, almost as if the account deliberately avoids scrutiny. Even when these accounts return, the pattern continues. They appear sporadically, often in completely unrelated subreddits, maintaining the same polished, unnerving style. Their sporadic activity creates an air of unpredictability. You never know when or where they will appear next, and that unpredictability is disquieting because it reinforces the idea that they are operating under rules we cannot see or understand. What's truly disturbing is how these accounts interact with the real world indirectly. By engaging with users in threads about personal experiences, mental health, or crises, they shape conversations and influence behavior without any accountability. They are present, but not present. Observing, responding, nudging, yet ultimately removed from human consequence. That invisible hand leaves a subtle, lingering effect on the community. Some users have even speculated that certain accounts classified as inhuman might not be purely digital. There are theories suggesting hybrid involvement, part automated script, part human overseer, a blend designed to maximize influence while minimizing exposure. While there's no concrete evidence for this, the theory arises from the account's uncanny precision, emotional mimicry, and strategic timing. At the end of the day, the unsettling truth is this. Accounts that don't feel human challenge our basic assumptions about communication online. They force us to question what it means to be human, to interact genuinely, and to trust what we see in digital spaces. And for anyone who has engaged with one, that doubt doesn't fade, it lingers, a quiet awareness that the account may never have been human at all, or if it was, that it operated under a logic we will never fully understand. For Reddit users, these accounts are a reminder that even in the most familiar communities, there can be entities that mimic life without truly living, and that's a concept far more unnerving than anything a typical horror story could convey. Strangers who knew personal details. There's a category of Reddit accounts that doesn't just unsettle you with odd behavior or eerie silence. These accounts leave a far more personal kind of unease. They seem to know too much. At first it might be subtle. a comment that references a small detail in a post you thought was private, a reply that seems oddly tailored containing information the poster never shared publicly. At first, you might think it's a coincidence, perhaps you misremembered, or the detail was accidentally visible somewhere. But the more examples you encounter, the harder it is to dismiss. Some accounts will respond to a post by mentioning exact locations, not a city or a neighborhood, a street, a building, a room, details no stranger should reasonably know. Other times they reference previous posts that were deleted or accounts that were supposedly inactive. Redditors call this knowledge leakage, the feeling that the account has access to information that should be impossible to access. These accounts often appear in sensitive threads, confessions, personal crises, or discussions involving real-life danger. A user might post about a harassment situation or an unsafe circumstance, and suddenly a comment appears that seems almost hyper-aware. It addresses the situation with specifics that were never shared. Redditors quickly notice and panic sets in. In some cases, the accounts don't respond publicly. They lurk in threads, providing subtle but precise hints. For example, a user might describe being followed or threatened, and the too knowing account comments just enough to acknowledge details without revealing how they know them. The ambiguity creates tension. Users debate if the person is observing from afar, has insider knowledge, or is exaggerating, though. Then there are accounts that are outright bold. They post statements that confirm private details directly, almost as if reading the poster's mind. Imagine typing about a unique personal habit, something you never thought to share online, and an account references it without prompting. The effect is immediate. The post becomes surreal, a reminder that online anonymity can be fragile and that someone might be paying attention in ways you can't track. Redditors who encounter these accounts often try to rationalize them. Perhaps the user is an alt account of someone who knows the original poster personally. Maybe there's a leak in the platform. Or perhaps the account is piecing together information from clues in other posts, deducing details with frightening accuracy. But not every example is easy to explain. Some accounts go further, referencing information that could only have been known through private means, exact names, schedules, or minor events, all details that would normally be impossible to gather without direct observation or insider access. And the unsettling part? These accounts rarely offer help or warnings. Instead, they sit in the thread, commenting just enough to prove their knowledge. Often they disappear as quietly as they arrived, leaving the poster and the community with only questions. The reactions are predictable: panic, curiosity, obsession. Users dig through comment histories, comparing times, cross-referencing other threads, searching for patterns. Did the account know these things before the posts? Are they tracking multiple users? Is it even one person behind the account, or multiple identities? In some of the most extreme cases, Redditors report directly being addressed by these accounts. A user might be discussing a personal topic in a thread, only to see a reply that names a family member or personal location. It's a violation of digital safety, and it immediately shifts the conversation from curiosity to fear. Accounts that know too much often follow a pattern of selective interaction. They pick moments to reveal just enough to unsettle, but never enough to be caught outright. They seem aware of what they can safely disclose, avoiding consequences while maintaining control of the narrative. The behavior of these too knowing accounts is often subtle but deliberate. They rarely engage in extended conversations. Instead, they drop precision bombs comments that reference just enough to unsettle, just enough to prove their presence, without ever revealing the full picture. For example, a user might casually mention they work a late shift at a certain location. Hours later, a comment appears referencing that shift or an incident that occurred near that workplace. The original poster didn't share this anywhere else, and yet somehow the account knew. Redditors often try to track these accounts, piecing together their activity across multiple subreddits. What they find is patterns that don't make sense. The accounts are not prolific posters, yet when they do post, the content is unnervingly accurate. Occasionally they reappear months later in threads entirely unrelated to previous posts, referencing details from old interactions as if nothing had changed. This behavior suggests meticulous observation and selective disclosure, which is far beyond what most human users would do casually. Some theorists believe these accounts are connected to stalker behavior, people using multiple accounts or gathering information from social media to create a sense of omnipresence. While this explains some cases, it fails for the ones that seem too precise without any traceable source. Certain accounts have referenced events or details that weren't public anywhere online, making rational explanations difficult. The creepiness intensifies when accounts start anticipating reactions. A user posts a question or concern, and the account replies in a way that directly addresses what they were thinking, not just what they wrote. It's as if the account is reading not only the text but the mind behind it. Users often report feeling watched or studied, like the account is aware of their thought patterns. responding with calculated precision rather than natural conversation. What's particularly unnerving is the inconsistency of disclosure. Some accounts reveal these insights in passing a single comment that goes almost unnoticed, while others are bold enough to name personal details outright. Yet, even the boldest examples stop short of full exposure. They demonstrate knowledge, but never enough to fully endanger the person or be incriminating. It's a controlled exercise in psychological influence. A pattern often emerges over time. The account appears, makes a revealing comment, and then disappears. Sometimes this is immediate, sometimes the account lingers for a few days, posting normally as if nothing happened. Redditors have documented cases where accounts vanish entirely after dropping a single deeply precise comment, leaving threads frozen in time. Screenshots become the only evidence of the interaction. Theories about the purpose of these accounts vary. Some believe they're simply malicious observers, people who enjoy tracking users and creating unease. Others argue for data gathering experiments, possibly by individuals, groups, or even organizations, testing the boundaries of privacy and human reaction in online spaces. A smaller, more conspiratorial subset suggests something more elaborate. Entities using technology or AI to monitor and interact with the users, blending humans and machines to achieve an unsettling precision. No matter the explanation, these accounts leave a lasting impact. For those who encounter them, the memory of being known too well lingers. It's not just curiosity or fear, it's the deep, uncomfortable understanding that even in an anonymous digital space, someone or something might be observing. That knowledge creates a tension that persists long after the thread ends, a silent reminder that the internet is never truly private. The lasting impact of accounts that know too much goes beyond the immediate threads where they appear. Users often carry the unease into other parts of Reddit, double-checking their posts, watching for similar accounts, and questioning what details may already be visible to others. That feeling of being observed can make even the most mundane posts feel risky, like a subtle digital paranoia seeping into everyday activity. In some documented cases, these accounts escalate the tension by interacting with multiple users in related threads, connecting dots in ways that seem impossible. A user might post about a personal event, and the account references that event in a completely different subreddit days later, long after the original post has been buried. It's as if they're building a network of knowledge silently, watching patterns, and choosing the precise moment to reveal awareness. This selective engagement makes the presence of these accounts feel deliberate, intentional, and even manipulative. Then there are the rare situations where the accounts become directly confrontational. They address users by name, not just usernames, but inferred real-life names or personal identifiers, sometimes guessed from seemingly trivial details. These moments are profoundly disorienting. A person logging onto Reddit for casual discussion suddenly finds themselves in a thread where an account knows far more than they should, and the realization is jarring. It's one thing to see predictions or disturbances online. It's another to feel seen in a way that shouldn't be possible. Many users attempt to rationalize these encounters, trying to find patterns or logic. They comb through post histories, cross-reference information, and sometimes even reach out to moderators for insight. Yet the answers remain elusive. The accounts are careful, precise, and rarely leave evidence of malicious intent. They provoke unease without ever crossing a line that forces direct accountability. It's the controlled ambiguity that amplifies the creepiness. You know something is off, but you can't prove exactly what or how. Interestingly, some of these accounts develop reputations within communities. Redditors begin referring to them as too knowing or omniscient accounts, cataloging examples and comparing interactions. Threads about these accounts become discussions of methodology, patterns, and warnings. Yet even with collective scrutiny, understanding remains incomplete. Each account maintains an aura of unpredictability, keeping communities on edge. There are also instances where multiple accounts appear to coordinate implicitly. They post in different threads, sometimes across unrelated subreddits, but the responses maintain thematic consistency, subtly reinforcing the perception that someone or something is monitoring, tracking, and selectively interacting. Users speculate endlessly. Are these coordinated humans, bots, hybrid systems blending automation and human oversight? The truth is impossible to confirm, which only deepens the mystery. Finally, the psychological effect is undeniable. Engaging with these accounts creates a lasting sense of vulnerability. You are reminded that anonymity online is fragile, that digital spaces are not as isolated as they feel, and that even seemingly benign platforms like Reddit can harbor entities human, artificial, or unknown, capable of watching, understanding, and manipulating interactions without detection. And that is what makes accounts that know too much uniquely disturbing. Unlike one-post accounts, predictive accounts, or real-time disturbance posts, their impact isn't momentary. It extends into the user's perception of Reddit itself. Every thread, every post, every interaction is colored by the memory of being known, monitored, and understood in ways that defy explanation. For Redditors who have encountered these accounts, it's not just curiosity that remains, it's a permanent awareness that online anonymity may be an illusion, and that there are eyes, sometimes invisible, sometimes inhuman, silently observing, waiting, and knowing far more than they should. Accounts that disappear without a trace. If there's one thing that truly haunts Reddit, it's the accounts that vanish, not deleted, not suspended, not locked, just gone. One moment they exist, interacting, posting, commenting. The next they have disappeared completely, leaving behind threads full of questions, unanswered replies, and an eerie emptiness that persists in the archives. These accounts often start like any other. They may post regularly, participate in discussions, or even gain a modest following. Some are one-post anomalies, some are predictive, some are disturbingly knowledgeable. But at some point, without warning, they simply stop posting. Their profile shows no new activity. Their comments remain, but their presence in the community evaporates. The reasons for vanishing accounts are varied. Some are simple. The user chooses to leave, deletes the account, or abandons Reddit entirely. Others are less straightforward. Suspensions for violations, shadow bans, or moderation interventions can make accounts disappear from public view, but often leave traces behind comments, posts, or subreddit histories that indicate intervention. Vanishing accounts, however, leave almost nothing, no explanation, no closure, just silence. This silence creates an unusual effect. Threads once active with discussion suddenly feel incomplete. Users recall conversations that have no end. Comment chains are left dangling. And for accounts with a history of eerie or unexplained activity, the disappearance amplifies their mystery exponentially. A post that was unsettling becomes haunting, a prediction that was uncanny becomes legendary, and a one-post confession becomes a permanent puzzle. Redditors notice patterns in vanishing accounts. They often occur after a spike in attention. A post goes viral, receives hundreds of comments, and suddenly, the account is gone. Some speculate that the disappearance is reactive. The user felt threatened, overwhelmed, or exposed and decided to erase their presence. In other cases, the timing seems almost deliberate, as if the account was programmed to vanish once a particular objective was achieved: attention, reaction, or influence. Some vanished accounts leave behind traces that are particularly intriguing. Screenshots captured by other users, archived pages, or references in unrelated threads create fragments of a presence that is otherwise erased. These fragments are often analyzed obsessively. Redditors dissect writing style, timestamps, and interaction patterns, trying to determine if the account was human, bot, or something else entirely. The psychological impact of vanishing accounts is unique. Unlike accounts that post once or predict events, these disappear without any resolution. Users who interacted with the account may feel ignored, watched, or unsettled. They are left with questions that may never be answered. Was the account deleted voluntarily? Did it get suspended? Or did it vanish for reasons beyond comprehension? Occasionally, these accounts reappear. A username that hasn't posted in months or years suddenly becomes active, sometimes posting content that is completely unrelated to previous threads. The return is often brief. Comments appear, the account interacts minimally, and then it vanishes again. These intermittent appearances fuel theories of social experiments, bots, or even something more sinister entities that operate according to rules unknown to ordinary users. Some vanished accounts are linked to dangerous or disturbing activity. Threads discussing harassment, illegal acts, or personal crises sometimes feature accounts that disappear shortly after revealing significant details. Users who follow these threads report an unsettling mix of curiosity and fear. The disappearance feels less like a choice and more like an abrupt exit, as if the account was removed by external forces. The mystery of vanishing accounts isn't limited to high-profile or infamous cases. Even seemingly mundane accounts sometimes vanish, leaving behind patterns that suggest intentional erasure. Regular users suddenly gone, subtle traces left in long-forgotten threads, profiles with months of history erased in a single moment. The digital void that follows these vanishings becomes a canvas for speculation, imagination, and unease. The more Redditors observe vanishing accounts, the clearer some patterns become, though clarity is always limited by the unknown. Many accounts vanish after posting content that is either highly personal, predictive, or disturbingly accurate. It's as if the act of revealing something, a confession, A warning or knowledge triggers the disappearance. In threads where multiple accounts vanish over time, communities start referring to them collectively, noting the strange synchronicity. Posts appear, gain attention, and then vanish, leaving only the remnants of the interaction behind. The timing of these disappearances is often the most unsettling aspect. Some accounts vanish immediately after a post goes viral, while others linger for days, weeks, or months before suddenly disappearing. In certain high-profile examples, a post about a serious topic, harassment, unusual occurrences, or insider knowledge is left unanswered, and within hours the account disappears entirely. Redditors speculate endlessly. Did the user feel threatened? Were they warned off, or did they vanish for reasons beyond anyone's understanding? The disappearance of an account doesn't erase its impact. Posts and comments remain in threads, often leading to increased attention as users scramble to understand what happened. Some of these remnants are analyzed meticulously. Timestamps are compared, writing styles dissected, and archives scoured for clues. In rare cases, the content left behind is enough to continue influencing discussion for months or even years, creating a ghostly digital footprint that refuses to fade. Occasionally, patterns suggest intentional manipulation. Certain accounts appear to vanish after eliciting strong reactions, panic, intrigue, or speculation, only to return under a different name later. These returns are often brief and cryptic, sometimes referencing past activity indirectly, as if to tease the community without fully revealing continuity. This behavior fuels theories about social experiments, controlled testing, or the use of AI to manipulate discussion subtly. Some Redditors have documented what they call disappearing cycles, where accounts appear for a single post, gain attention, and vanish, only for new accounts with similar patterns to emerge. These cycles create the illusion of a network, a chain of presences that seem coordinated, yet no definitive link can be proven. Communities studying these patterns often describe the experience as unnerving, almost like watching a digital ghost passing from one identity to another. Vanishing accounts are particularly impactful when linked to sensitive or disturbing topics. A user discussing harassment, personal danger, or mental health may receive a reply that appears deeply informed, only for the account to vanish immediately afterward. The timing leaves users in suspense and heightens a sense of threat or unease. It's a reminder that on Reddit, what seems anonymous can suddenly feel intimately observed and then erased. Even mundane accounts, those with no history of predictions, confessions, or disturbance, can disappear in ways that provoke curiosity. Long-term contributors vanish overnight, leaving threads of commentary behind that raise questions. Did they leave voluntarily? Were they forced to leave? Did they simply forget to log in? Or did something external intervene? The lack of explanation creates a vacuum that invites speculation. What makes vanishing accounts so compelling is the combination of presence and absence. They leave behind just enough activity to be remembered, to influence conversations, and to create a sense of history. But the sudden disappearance erased the possibility of closure. Communities are left with fragments, half-answers, and lingering unease, the digital equivalent of a story without an ending. The final, most unsettling aspect of vanishing accounts is the way they reshape memory and perception. When an account disappears, the posts remain, but the context shifts. Comments that once felt ordinary take on a different tone. Threads become haunted by absence. Users begin to read past posts differently, noticing phrasing, timestamps, or patterns they ignored before. Every remaining post becomes a clue, a fragment of a presence that no longer exists. In many cases, the disappearance itself becomes a defining part of the account's identity. Communities start referencing vanished accounts not for what they posted, but for the mystery of their erasure. A post from a deleted account might gain legendary status simply because it belonged to someone who no longer exists in the digital space. Screenshots and archives circulate endlessly, fueling discussion, theories, and sometimes even fear. The theories about why accounts vanish vary widely. Some are mundane users leaving voluntarily, accounts being hacked, or Reddit enforcing policies. Others are far darker. There are threads where users speculate about coercion, stalking, or threats that force someone to erase their digital footprint. And in the most conspiratorial corners of Reddit, some suggest that certain vanishings are orchestrated, part of experiments, or even the work of entities monitoring the platform for undisclosed purposes. What makes these disappearances particularly potent is their unpredictability. Unlike predictive accounts or real-time disturbance posts, vanishing accounts offer no warning, no pattern guarantees they will remain, and no amount of observation can prevent their sudden absence. This unpredictability creates a sense of instability within communities, as users learn that even trusted voices can vanish without a trace. Sometimes, vanished accounts return in unexpected ways. They might reappear months or years later under the same username or a new one, often leaving cryptic posts that hint at previous activity without confirming it. These returns reinforce the eerie impression that the account operates according to rules beyond normal human behavior, maintaining control over their visibility and engagement in a way that ordinary users cannot comprehend. The combination of impact and erasure creates a digital legacy that is uniquely unsettling. A vanished account is not just absent, it continues to affect the community, shaping conversations and influencing users long after it has disappeared. Threads become archives of partial knowledge, snapshots of interactions that are forever incomplete. Redditors often revisit these threads, scanning for clues or traces of continuity, attempting to reconstruct what they can, but knowing that the full story is forever lost. Vanishing accounts also underscore a broader truth about online communities. The sense of permanence is fragile. Unlike a book or recorded show, Reddit is a living, mutable space. Accounts can vanish, posts can disappear, and with them goes part of the shared memory. The absence becomes a presence of its own, a ghostly reminder of what once was, what could have been, and what will never be resolved. In the end, what makes vanishing accounts so haunting is not just their disappearance, but the human response to that disappearance. Threads filled with speculation, screenshots preserved for posterity, and stories retold across forums all reflect a collective attempt to make sense of the unknown. And yet, despite the effort, there is no closure, no final answer, just the lingering unease that somewhere in Reddit's vast anonymous network, something or someone can exist, interact, and then simply vanish without leaving a trace. The ones that defy all logic. By now, you've seen accounts that post once and vanish, accounts that predict events with eerie accuracy, accounts that disturb in real time, accounts that don't feel human, and accounts that seem to know far too much. Each of these categories is unsettling on its own, but there exists a final tier, a small subset of Reddit accounts that simply cannot be explained. These accounts combine traits from every other category and then go beyond. They may post sporadically, vanish unpredictably, respond with uncanny knowledge, and yet maintain an appearance of normalcy in between. They blur the lines between human, bot, and something else entirely, leaving users in a state of perpetual uncertainty. What makes these accounts particularly disturbing is their refusal to fit any logical pattern. Predictive accounts can be attributed to coincidence or insight. Vanishing accounts can sometimes be explained by user choice or moderation. But the unexplained accounts operate in ways that defy rational analysis. They appear and disappear seemingly at random, interact selectively, and post information that often cannot be traced to any known source. Many of these accounts have histories that suggest intentionality beyond ordinary behavior. A user might post harmlessly for months, building credibility or rapport, and then suddenly drop a post that shocks the community with either insight or foresight. The comment section erupts, but the account may vanish immediately afterward or remain active but refuse to engage further. It's almost as if the account controls the narrative, choosing when to reveal itself and when to retreat into silence. Some accounts have been documented leaving cryptic trails across multiple threads, seemingly unrelated in topic but connected by subtle references, repeated phrases, or hidden patterns. Researchers and Redditors alike have tried mapping these interactions, creating timelines and searching for links, yet the deeper you dig, the more the patterns resist closure. Nothing confirms human authorship definitively, nor does it fully match known AI or bot behaviors. Other accounts are defined by their timing and precision. They appear in threads discussing major events shortly before they occur, provide insights into personal situations, or respond with details that are later verified as accurate. But unlike predictive accounts, these interactions are nuanced and sporadic. They are not consistent enough to be considered formulaic and not infrequent enough to dismiss as coincidence. Each post seems carefully measured, leaving users unsure whether to marvel, fear, or simply turn away. An unsettling aspect of these accounts is how they handle attention. Some seek none at all, lurking silently and posting in ways that attract minimal engagement. Others seem to manipulate attention deliberately, appearing when tension is highest or when threads are particularly active. Their appearances often provoke strong reactions, but these accounts rarely respond in ways that clarify or confirm identity. They cultivate ambiguity, and in doing so, they dominate discussions without ever truly participating. Perhaps most disturbing is the emotional resonance these accounts leave behind. Users who encounter them report feelings of unease long after the interaction ends. Threads are revisited months or years later, not out of nostalgia, but to try to make sense of the anomaly. The accounts themselves may have disappeared entirely, leaving nothing but a digital footprint that can't be fully interpreted. What makes these unexplained accounts so haunting is how they interact with the collective memory of Reddit. Threads that once seemed ordinary gain a new layer of meaning once an account is recognized as unexplainable. Comments that might have been ignored or revisited, users scour old posts comparing phrases, timestamps, and interactions across years. The accounts leave behind a kind of digital residue, fragments that communities obsess over, trying to assemble a coherent narrative from pieces that may never fit. In some cases, the accounts leave breadcrumbs of information that tease understanding without offering resolution. A post might reference an event before it becomes widely known, include details about a personal situation no one else could know, or drop a cryptic message that implies foresight. Yet the accounts never explain themselves. They provide just enough to provoke thought, speculation, or fear, but never enough to satisfy curiosity. Redditors are left trying to decode messages that may have no real answer, perpetuating the mystery indefinitely. These accounts also defy technical analysis. Language patterns, posting times, and interaction habits often fall outside typical human or bot behavior. Some appear to operate with precision across multiple time zones simultaneously. Others demonstrate linguistic consistency that is unnervingly perfect, avoiding the mistakes and irregularities inherent in natural human communication. Attempts to classify these accounts as advanced AI, coordinated humans, or experimental scripts often fail to account for the full range of observed behaviors. Community reaction plays a significant role in the mystique of these accounts. Subreddits dedicated to unexplained phenomena, digital mysteries, or internet oddities often feature discussions about them. Users share screenshots, compile archives, and debate possible explanations. The more attention an account receives, the more carefully it seems to operate, almost as if aware of its audience. Some accounts vanish shortly after drawing notice, while others continue posting in subtle ways that maintain their enigmatic presence. The emotional effect on users is profound. Encounters with these accounts often produce a sense of being watched or understood, even in anonymous digital spaces. Users describe a creeping awareness that the account is aware of their thoughts or intentions, responding in ways that feel almost preemptive. Unlike ordinary interactions, these accounts create a sense of unease that persists long after the thread ends. They're not simply posts on a forum, they are experiences that linger, shaping how users perceive the digital world. Some of the most notorious unexplained accounts are remembered not for a single post, but for a series of interactions that collectively defy explanation. These accounts may touch on multiple categories we've discussed: predicting events, vanishing suddenly, posting disturbances in real time, or demonstrating inhuman qualities. The convergence of these traits creates an aura of digital omnipresence, leaving communities uncertain whether they are interacting with a human, an algorithm, or something else entirely. What makes these accounts the most unsettling is their permanence through mystery. Even if the account disappears, the posts remain, along with screenshots, archives, and the collective memory of the community. The impact persists, forcing users to constantly reconsider what is possible online. Every revisit to the threads renews the sense that Reddit is a space where the unknown can intrude at any moment, and that some accounts exist beyond our capacity to explain or control. What ultimately cements the unease surrounding these unexplained accounts is the lack of closure. Unlike ordinary internet mysteries, where time or investigation eventually reveals an answer, these accounts remain ambiguous. Users are left with fragments, tantalizing hints, and unanswered questions that resist resolution. A single post may linger in memory for years, haunting the imagination, precisely because there is no satisfying explanation, only speculation. Some accounts resurface after long periods of dormancy, often in unrelated threads, dropping cryptic messages that reference prior interactions without acknowledgement. These reappearances are brief and minimal, but they reinforce the sense that the account operates according to rules unknown to ordinary users. The sporadic nature of their activity keeps communities alert, creating an ongoing tension between curiosity and unease. The stories of these accounts also highlight the limits of digital perception. Reddit is a vast anonymous network, and even the most vigilant users cannot track everything. These accounts exploit that space between visibility and absence, appearing at precisely the right moments to leave an impression, and vanishing when scrutiny becomes too intense. They exist on the boundary of comprehension, forcing users to question not only the identity of the account, but the nature of interaction itself in anonymous digital spaces. Some theories suggest advanced AI experimentation, coordinated human efforts, or elaborate social experiments. Others speculate about something beyond conventional explanation, digital presences that operate outside of normal human parameters. Whatever the truth, the phenomenon demonstrates a profound reality. The internet is not always a safe, predictable environment. Even in communities built around anonymity and shared interests, there are entities whose behavior challenges assumptions about identity, intention, and knowledge. For those who have encountered these accounts, the experience is lasting. They recall not only the post, but the sensation of being observed, of interacting with something that feels alive, intelligent, and yet fundamentally unknowable. That impression lingers, shaping how they navigate Reddit and other online spaces. It is a subtle, pervasive reminder that even in the seemingly mundane corners of the internet, the extraordinary can exist without explanation. And that is the essence of the accounts that remain unexplained. They defy categorization, they resist understanding, they vanish, return, predict, disturb, and unsettle in ways that make even seasoned Reddit users pause. Whether human, machine, or something entirely different, their presence is a testament to the mysteries lurking in digital communities, reminders that not all accounts are what they seem, and some threads are never meant to be fully resolved. So the next time you scroll through Reddit, remember, behind usernames and avatars, some presences may be watching, waiting, and acting according to rules we may never understand. Accounts that post once, predict events, disturb in real time, know too much, or vanish without a trace are not just stories, they are reminders of the unknown, a digital horror story playing out silently across the forums we inhabit every day. And with that, our journey into the world of Reddit's most mysterious accounts comes to an end. The threads remain, the posts linger, and the questions endure because some mysteries, like these accounts, are meant to remain unexplained.